Hello wonderful world and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a motorcycle review. The motorcycle in question is the Honda XR150, a motorcycle I find both fascinating and extremely useful. But let me begin with a little bit of thrill. For many, this is a non-starter. At 150cc, most would consider this underpowered. However, what I have found with this bike is that it's an all-terrain bike. You can commute on this, you can go off-road on this, and it's so light that the bike does not manhandle you, but you can literally manhandle the bike. That's a major plus when you get stuck in places where really you need to force the bike out of there. It's an extremely fuel-efficient bike, but you'd kind of expect that. With a factory generating 150cc, it's not going to burn fuel like there's no tomorrow. Next is maneuverability. This bike is extremely nimble. It's light, and it has a great road presence. Of course, it's not a track bike, and with those knobblies, you have to be a little careful going too fast around corners, but it holds its own. It is very nimble, as I said, and it looks like a beast of a bike. It's not a light bike that looks very small, it's a light bike that looks fairly big, and that makes it look extremely attractive. Although some don't like the look of dual sport motocross bikes, I actually do. They are simply good looking, no gimmick bikes. But anyway, speaking of gimmicks, or rather no gimmicks, let's talk about the simplicity of this bike, which adds to another pro. It's a carburetor engine. Maintenance is simple, you just change the oil. There's no radiator, it's air cooled. Basically, this is one of those bikes that if you were to look after this yourself, you wouldn't really have to do much. And that's another plus. Because so many bikes now require you to take them to the dealer. You cannot touch them yourself, because if you do, warranties or the complication of dealing with it will cause you no end of havoc. But this, so simple, so simple. A surprise to me was the torque on this bike. You know, when you think 150cc, you think scooters or really small bikes that just wouldn't have any power. But the torque on this bike is phenomenal. From a stationary position, this shoots out like a bullet out of a gun. And I'm not kidding you, 150 on this bike, this light frame. Obviously, in my case, I'm the heavy part component of this rider and bike, but the bike still has stupendous acceleration. And that, I think, is very useful when you're commuting at lights or when you're going up inclines. Now, it wouldn't be right if I didn't share some of the negatives. So here goes. There's not many, but there are a few. One, even though being a carburetor engine is a plus, it also is a negative. When it's cold, you've got to hold on to that choke for a little while before you get this to fire up. And that sometimes is irritating, but manageable, although slightly irritating. Some like the roar of a motorcycle engine. Unfortunately, this bike does not roar. It's not a lion, it's not even a small cat. It makes a sound, it's not unpleasant, but it's not something that's gonna give you a thrill. But then again, we know it's 150cc, so to expect too much is maybe foolish on our part. Braking is reasonable but not great, and no ABS may be something that pushes people away from this bike. The last negative is cost. Now, there may be two variants, but I know this is much cheaper in Asia, whereas my brothers in Canada and America are paying extremely higher prices for this bike. And I think that is where we may have an issue, because at that price one can get a 250, a CRF, a KLX, an XT, and then maybe that extra 100cc pushes this bike out of contention. However, I've ridden the other bikes and I still think there is a place for this, and if you've got the money and you want this as a second bike, it's a great option. That's it, folks. That's review over. All those on two wheels, please ride carefully. For the rest of us, take care. God bless you all.